Shares of Archer Aviation have really struggled in 2025. Just in the past month, shares are down about 17.8%. And so far this year, you can see the stock's down almost 25%. So that's lagging the market by a pretty wide margin. But there's a lot of exciting news happening with Archer Aviation, and especially in the electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle space. Not only is there more interest in building out these air taxi networks, but militaries are getting involved. Airlines are getting involved. And there's a few catalysts that have hit Archer Aviation just in the past couple of weeks that I want to go over. And what they're doing, what we want to see with Archer Aviation today is that they're building out their backlog, their pipeline. So as they start to roll their commercial aircraft off their line, they want to have demand for those aircraft. They want to have the air taxi fleet kind of being built in the background. They want to have military demand. They want to have commercial airline demand. So that if your biggest problem that you have is that you can't make your aircraft faster enough, that's a phenomenal problem to have for Archer Aviation. So let's dig into it. My name is Travis Hoium. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content. And thanks to this video sponsor, The Motley Fool. If you go to fool.com/ASYM, they'll give you their top 10 stocks to buy right now. Let's just lay some of the foundation of what we want to see from Archer Aviation right now. They are at the point where they're moving along the path of getting FAA approval for their eVTOL aircraft. That will likely happen sometime early in 2026. And then they're going to be able to start launching aircraft in places like Abu Dhabi. There is plans to launch in the US. I'll get to that in just a second. And they're going to be building up to 10 Midnight aircraft this year alone to support their testing programs and those early deployment partners. So this year, it's all about regulations, building aircraft at a higher scale, and then getting to that deployment phase. So they want to be building backlog in this position, so that when we get to 2026, now you start to really ramping up revenue generation. Speaking of demand, the air taxi network that they're contemplating building in New York is, I think, one of the early use cases that's going to probably get a lot of adoption and really show whether this is a business model that's going to be sustainable long-term or not. New York is one of those areas that has very high demand for helicopters today, so it makes sense to move some of these a little bit longer flights to something like these eVTOL aircraft. So they're saying here that they're going to be replacing 1 to 2 hour drives with 5 to 15 minute flights. And these aren't just going to the close-in boroughs. This is going into Connecticut. It's going out into Long Island, and then also over to New Jersey. And from an infrastructure standpoint, they're looking to build on top of what already exists. You can see that here. They're looking to utilize aviation properties in the region that already have helipads and then use those as vertiports, as they're being called in the eVTOL industry. So this isn't the first one of these networks that's been contemplated. Archer Aviation and Joby Aviation are both building out kind of similar business models. But having this kind of pipeline and where you're going to build out these networks is going to be ultimately really important, because the next step is proving out that the economics of this business model works. So look for that to start to take hold in 2025. The other big piece of news came out March 27th. Ethiopian Airlines, which is Africa's largest airline, announced a deal that could be up to $30 million to buy Launch Edition Archer aircraft. This, again, is going to be an air taxi network. They keep saying in the region. I assume this means in Ethiopia. In this case, Archer Aviation would actually sell the aircraft to Ethiopian Airlines, who would be the operator of this network. And then they would also provide things like pilots, technicians, and engineers to work on it. So there would be a recurring revenue stream. But unlike Joby, who's going to own their aircraft, Archer Aviation would actually be offloading the operations and the ownership of these aircraft to another third party. Again, this isn't a unique deal or arrangement, but it's showing that traditional airlines are getting interested in how are we going to be involved in eVTOL. Are we going to sort of push that off to companies like Uber, who are going to connect, maybe companies like Joby, they have a partnership, or are we going to try to extend our business model from point-to-point airlines to actually getting you closer to the destination you want to go to? That's where something like an eVTOL and taking it from an airport to a helipad would be a potential value add for a lot of especially high-end customers. The final announcement was one with Palantir. And these are two companies that are kind of natural fits. They're both kind of on the bleeding edge of the next generation, particularly in the military and government space. So natural that they would be partnering together, initially leveraging Palantir's Foundry and AIP to accelerate the scaling of its aircraft manufacturing capabilities. So that's basically just Archer Aviation saying we're going to use Palantir in our internal operations. Ultimately, though, I think the more interesting goal is the second bullet point there. Archer and Palantir plan to work in parallel to develop software for next generation critical aviation systems, including air traffic control, movement control, and route planning. So that's going to be using artificial intelligence to do a lot of the things that humans are doing today, doing flight planning, control of aircraft, making sure that you're not having crashes, especially if you're increasing the number of aircraft that are flying around certain areas with something like eVTOL. If we have dozens or hundreds of these in major cities like New York, it's going to be a huge problem for something like air traffic control. That's where something like Palantir could potentially play a big role. There's also the military aspect as well. Palantir is a big player in the military. ACHR is moving into that military space. That is an area where they see potential growth. But again, where is their first area of growth and their first area of focus going to be? They're going to have to play that dance as they have these air traffic, as they build out these air taxi networks. They partner with airlines, and then you also have military customers. But three, I think, pretty important announcements.
Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
I think these are three pretty important announcements from ACHR Aviation because it shows that they're starting to build that backlog, that is, they're building more aircraft next year. It's only going to be about 10 this year, looking for that FAA approval to actually take off with these aircraft, probably sometime early to middle of next year, depending on what kind of delays look like. But we'll get more information on that in the next conference call. But these are all positive steps in the right direction. So the fact that the stock is pulling back, despite the fact that the company is moving forward, I think gives us a little bit better risk reward as investors. Now, the concern I have for ACHR Aviation is, what is their ultimate focus? What is the number one thing that they're working on right now? You obviously have the aircraft. That's the number one priority. But then what's the business model beyond that? Are they just going to be selling to the company that's going to buy the most aircraft? Are they going to sell to whoever's going to pay the highest price? Do they actually want to be an air taxi network business? That's what Joby Aviation is leaning into. They're focused on that air taxi business. The aircraft is built for air taxis. It seems like ACHR Aviation kind of wants to do a whole bunch of things. So that's why I'm a little bit more hesitant about ACHR Aviation. They've had obviously the best headlines. They have the best partnerships. Companies like Palantir, their deals with the military. But business models really matter in this business. And that's where I have the most questions about ACHR Aviation, because I want to see them focus on one of these things and actually scale it up to be a really big business. I think Joby Aviation is just a much more focused company in that respect, because they are focused on the air taxi business. So they're going to be able to build out those networks. And then if we do have some sort of network effect, they're going to potentially be in a lead, because that's where 100% of their capacity is going to go. So something to keep an eye on if you're an investor in ACHR Aviation. I don't own either of these stocks yet, but two that I'm very interested in adding, especially as they pull back, as the market pulls back over the past couple of months. But let me know what you think about ACHR Aviation today. Is this a company where the risk is worth the reward? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to Asymmetric Investing. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.